County Conversation podcast is sponsored by Daffabet, the world's leading online betting site. To find out more, visit daffabet.com. Hello and welcome to the County Conversation, the show where we take the three most interesting stories from the last week of county cricket and give you the inside track to them here. I'm Cameron Punsonby.
I am Nick Friend.
And our three topics this week are, hey, we're back. What have we missed? There was 1 week off. Did you miss us? We missed you. That's number one. Number two, transfer season is underway. There's some news in the county game that we're going to go through. And number three is back gauges. What's the fuss? What's happening? What did Phil Salt do wrong? And a general quick skim over the blast. And, well, it's finally getting towards the pointy end of the group stage. So, topic one. Nick, we went away for 1 week and 5 million runs were scored. It was 31 centuries, the most that have ever been scored in a round of county championship cricket. Surrey got 820, a club record. Dom Sibley got 300. And I think I want to start with, we've done so much Kookaburra conversation. I don't necessarily want to speak about the merits or the negatives of the idea. But the question I want to pose to you is one that was kind of put to Ben Stokes in the lead up to the Edgbaston test, which was like, have you seen what's going on? Like, sorry, but 800. And his reply was like, yeah, but like, I think there are always ways to get good players out, basically. There are always opportunities. So, is the evidence of 31 centuries the idea that, are the ECB going, Jesus, we can never do this again? Or are they saying, this is exactly why we need to do it? Because the challenge was for domestic bowlers to upskill themselves, play with the Kookaburra ball, learn how to dismiss batters, and they haven't learned to do it yet. So the experiment continues.
31 centuries, that's a great first-class career.
It's remarkable. It was incredible.
No, I think is my answer. I think the bit of the experiment is still not cracked. And I know we've harped on about the schedule on most weeks of this podcast, particularly this year, and I don't think we're going to stop. I think the bit that the experiment is not cracked, it's tried all parts of the summer, right? It's tried April, it's tried sort of late August, so September, it's tried June, it's tried July. The bit it hasn't tried is finding a period in the schedule or in the summer where bowlers are fresh, pitches are fresh. Oh, sorry, not pitches are fresh. Bowlers are fresh.
They did that last year, April.
No, hear me out. Where bowlers are fresh and kind of like good to go. Where pitches are fresh, and by fresh I mean, I don't just mean haven't been played on. I mean, it's sort of adequate for the Kookaburra ball. Yes, they played last April, but yes, they played on a bunch of sort of soft feather beds that all of the Australian and New Zealand seamers who were over here at that time said, this is not when you use the Kookaburra. This is not what we do with it. This is not how you get the characteristics that we see with the Kookaburra down under. This is not how you create those over here. So what they've not actually done is put the two things together at the right time and given everyone a fair crack. These rounds came after, 8 blast games for all the counties in effectively 2.5 weeks, on the back of 7 Champo rounds in 8 weeks, both for the bowlers, but also for the ground staff. So you end up with a situation where pitches are just dead because no one's had any time to work on them. But the bowlers are also pretty dead. And you end up in this position where you're told the whole thing about the Kookaburra is, the bowlers can't bowl it. The bowlers can't bowl at 75% and expect anything out of it. But the bowlers also can't bowl at 100% because they're all cooked. So you end up in a situation where bowlers have to bowl at 75%, 80% to be able to get through to next week to do the Kookaburra again, just so they don't break, which means you end up with a bunch of blokes bowling, at 3/4. I remember Sam Cook saying to me at one point last year, and Sam Cook is the best Kookaburra bowler in the country, but he's also the best voice for the schedule in the country. And he said at the start of last season that he was just going to start missing games because he couldn't play 14 championship games, 14 blast games, and get through that season in a way that he was still performing. Ultimately, he said, you're always giving 100% of yourself, but what you're giving 100% of reduces.
It's smaller, yeah.
So you end up, you've got a lot of bowlers essentially trotting in, giving 80%, 100% of that 80%, but still not getting what they want to get out of it, which I think eventually leads to Johnny Bairstow bowling, Haseeb Hameed bowling, Liam Patterson-White bowling 62 overs in the first innings of a game, and ultimately leads to 30. And that was the first round of the games. That was rather than the second of what we've just seen in late June. But what that is what ultimately leads to 31 centuries in that time.
I think I'm always of the opinion that I'd rather criticize action rather than inaction, and I think the experiment came from a good place, an imaginative place, where it was like, how can we change something needs to change in English cricket, or especially at that time, that was the kind of general thought process. What can we do? And this was one of the ideas. I think it has not worked in that, as you said there, you're effectively putting your wind in the air, going like, we need the Goldilocks effect for this to produce kind of the intended results. I think it is also relevant that you're not trying to get the fourth seamer at Gloucestershire or Derbyshire to learn how to upskill themselves with the Kookaburra ball. You're actually wanting the people who are currently playing for England to probably have that experience.
And this was our tongue-in-cheek comment a couple of weeks ago. And it was very much meant like
Yeah,
kind of as a joke, but that is also the reality. You've got to remember, it's not just, as we saw with Jofra Archer ahead of the second test, it's not just the guys who are playing for England who then don't play, but it's all the guys who are on the fringes of England who then don't play because they're with the squad,
yeah.
or they're being rested by the ECB ahead of the later test this summer. So actually, you end up with, I was, put my hands in the air, I was completely off last week. I followed very little cricket at the time. I've obviously looked back on it, but how many of the bowlers who England will take to Australia, so not the four who played against India, Edgbaston, how many bowlers who England will take to Australia played with the Kookaburra last week?
On Matt Potts, that's at the Oval. That'll be my prediction.
That is, and if that's correct, it's not going to be far off. We might have missed one or two there, but the reality is, it's not just the guys who are playing for England. It is, it's you're trying to upskill, as you say. It's not about upskilling someone who we know is 5'8" and is always going to bowl 75 mile an hour.
Yeah.
It is England aren't going to pick them.
England aren't interested in how Ben Green is doing with the Kookaburra. They are interested in how Chris Wokes or Jamie Overton do with the Kookaburra, and those two players were at Edgbaston bowling with the Dukes for England. So again, I want to go back to my initial point because I think it's very easy to get snarky at all kind of forms of authority.
I agree with you, and this does remain. I think it's what was worth saying is it remains an experiment. Like this is, the years this has been done, they have literally it's the last 3 seasons. They've never said we've cracked it. They went back to these games this year because it worked better than last year. There was very much an acceptance that what happened last year was nonsense and did not work.
This hasn't worked either.
No, it hasn't worked, and I think it worked better. It worked better the first time because we got some tangible. But also because it was the first time they'd done it, so everything we saw was new. So spinners bowling a million overs, some teams doctoring pitches to make them really spin friendly. Shoaib Bashir, as we said a couple of weeks ago on here, that was that was kind of the springboard in a way, wasn't it? Liam Dawson always takes wickets, but he took 12 for in a game. Josh Taker's career changed essentially on those rounds because he became this. He went from being a young opening batter to a young opening batter who he bowled good off spin, and James Rue got a big 100. Then that second set at the start of April, where it was great for Sam Cooke because he proved himself to be the seamer who can do it, and he backed up his talk about liking to bowl with it. So they've all achieved little tiny bits within. This one, I think, has achieved the least tangibly because actually, this is always what this last round achieved was the fear that everyone's always had. Was that you're gonna,
This was the bad thing. This was the bad thing we didn't
everyone
want.
has always said is like the worst case scenario. You're going to watch everyone just bowling for 4 days.
And to the point that I think you raised a couple of weeks ago, and I think where I ultimately land in terms of in the debate, in the answer to the initial question of like, is this actually evidence of why Kookaburra should be used because you're trying to upskill these players? It wasn't just the English lads who were struggling. Yuzvendra Chahal took naught for 154.
Yeah. Well, it was the Willow Rourke example a couple of weeks ago as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Like, this is a lad who bowls with it back home, who is 6'6", who bowls 90 miles an hour, who spent the winter bouncing out Harry Brook.
Yeah.
And here he is standing there going, what on earth are we doing here? What was noticeable though, and this is not what was noticeable, and this speaks to the pitch point. And I remember Dan Worrell saying to me at the start of last season, when I asked about the Kookaburra, he said, what you'll very quickly find is the Kookaburra is not about the ball, it's about the surface on which the ball is used. And 2 of the 3 results in this round came on outgrounds at Chesterfield, where Lancashire beat Derbyshire.
Ooh, I like this.
And at another outground where someone beat someone. It was just in my head, and it's just completely...
That's fun.
and at York, where Yorkshire beat Essex. The third result was at Leicestershire, where Middlesex battered Leicestershire out of the blue, unbeaten, top of the league. Once again, I wasn't there, I wasn't working. However, if you go back to not this time last year, if you go back to late August last year, you might remember that, and I think this was a Kookaburra round, you might remember that Leicestershire produced an absolute green top against Yorkshire.
Oh, vaguely, yeah.
They found themselves 15 for 7. So the third result was come at a ground where, once again, at a county that has tried to make results happen in these circumstances. The pitch thing is interesting. We spoke about this with Keaton Jennings on this podcast last year, and how professional cricket pitch flat is a very different flat
Yeah.
to club cricket flat. And I'm not saying they should all play Kookaburra rounds on club grounds, but dry summer club pitches, Chesterfield's reputationally, yes, there are runs, it's a club ground, but reputationally is also always a spicy pitch.
Yeah.
So you can even sort of weave caveats into the results we have had.
Nice. You know what, Nick? I think that's a very good point. And we're going to move on a little bit. Similar kind of a tangent. You mentioned it in terms of the Sam Kookaburra bowler, as I call him.
Very good.
It's very funny. Look at us just praising each other's work. He mentioned the kind of like the 75% thing where everyone's tired. You give 100% of yourself, but what you're giving is less. Now, there have been some responses to the potential remodelling of the county championship, which me and Nick and George DeBell discussed on this show a couple of weeks ago. Surrey and Somerset have put out quite kind of fervent statements kind of backing option 1, which is the remaining at 14 games for the year, but Division 1 becomes an 8-team league and Division 2 becomes a 10-team league. Worcestershire have kind of done a summary of all 3 of the options. If you do want to understand more about those options, go back and listen to our podcast with George DeBell, who was kind of had his ear on the ground and was kind of reporting all of it. Somerset, their kind of statement here, these are their words. As expressed, option 1 is the only model which has support from Somerset. And you may have read that there is at least one other quite powerful ally in this conversation. That's Surrey. Our position across both competitions is not a popular one, but we feel it is important for us to stand strong behind something which supports our club and region, particularly at a time of incredible change and uncertainty in the game. So they want to keep the number of games as it currently is, and they want that across the T20 Blast as well. Is that correct, Nick?
Yeah, Somerset essentially say that what we've got at the moment works for them in terms of number of games, in terms of they are serving the community, and obviously Somerset essentially is a one club. I would say, very much one club town, Taunton, and it works. We've all seen packed houses at Taunton for the Blast. That said, not so much so in the last year or so, and we've certainly, we've seen big old crowds for Championship cricket there as well. And their view is, we're serving a community, we're a cricket club. Our job is to provide cricket. You want every county to kind of to come forward with what work, with what works for them, really, because that is, I suppose, how we'll eventually reach consensus of some kind. I mean, I take issue with some of what they've written. On a statement on their club website, they said the following as well. This is on the subject of player workload. It said, in short, we see workload management as a critical function of our club through our sports science and medicine experts in consultation with the players themselves and our coaches. It is not the job of the fixture schedule. That, I think, is complete nonsense.
Yeah.
It is absolutely the job of the fixture schedule. We've said enough on this podcast about this to not go over our ground with it, but that is a ludicrous statement. I think. I don't think those two things can both be true. That you can't work through this with your players and your coaching staff, and simultaneously say that the schedule's job is just to throw cricket at players on different ends of the country every single day.
Well, we had Lancashire had Saka Mahmood go down after a back-to-back T20 Blast game.
Sussex. Go on, sorry.
No, keep going. No,
I was going to say, just on a Sussex lost 3 players between a home game on a Friday night and Glamorgan away on a Saturday night, which had been forecast by Sussex players to me in advance as saying essentially, watch us go down here. They lost 2 players to torn calf muscles. Ollie Robinson had to be pulled out of that game to manage the little thing as well. It's not rocket science, and particularly when people from the club are saying to you in advance, circling it, going, "Watch this one go wrong."
Yeah.
The idea that it's not the fixture schedule's job to keep players safe actually goes against what Adam Fordham, the head of the fixture schedule for the ECB, told me in an interview for the Cricketer over the winter. He literally said, "I completely sympathise. I'm a former player myself. This is mad." Um, it's not. It is absolutely the job of the fixture schedule to provide content for for clubs and cricket for fans.
Let's focus it on the county championship a little bit. We're going to do some of the blast stuff a bit, but in due course. But in terms of the county championship, sorry, I quite liked parts of their statement in that, and they are a unique club in that, and they're unique in their advantages. We all know this, but they've broken the record for the highest county championship attendance of the 21st century 3 or 4 times over this year. You're working there on a Friday afternoon. There are 6,500 people in the ground, and it's great. It's really, really good. And
They are the Mondo Duplantis of the county game.
the what?
Is that his name? Is it Mondo Duplantis?
I have no idea.
You know, the pole vaulter who breaks
Oh,
who
right.
weighs my record by a centimetre every
Yeah.
week.
Okay, that makes sense now. I was
They have a
incredibly confused. It's actually a
they have a
very
Red Bull festival, and they get another. It's 6,200.
you're on
But no, you're right.
fires.
Like
Yeah.
they do a brilliant.
And
Um,
and so their argument in short is this is a good thing that's getting better. Let's back it. Let's keep going. Let's keep playing this number of cricket rather than it being a case of, oh, we need to make space. Let's celebrate something that we could potentially reinvigorate. And yes, they've got specific advantages that are unique to them. Again, they're in South London. There's a young, affluent demographic on their doorstep. They let people bring in their own beer, which I know this might sound ridiculous. It makes a difference because if you're 26 and you're in London and you've got a choice of spending £7.50 a pint down the road with your mates, or you can go into the Oval with your pack of 4 beer and Moretti's or whatever it is, and you sit there and chat for the afternoon. That's literally what people are doing. I remember having this conversation with our friend and colleague Taha Hashim, who's out the Guardian last year. We're wandering around the Oval early on in the season, and you're looking around, and it's just full of like 23-year-old Dalstonites, people from Hackney and Camden. And he's like, "Am I going? Is county cricket cool?" And I was like, "No, it's a cheap beer. Like that's why people are here." And also a point that I'm shocked more grounds don't make more of this. The Wi-Fi at the Oval is good, and so people come there and work. And so if you can perch up, it used to be a case of we need as many weekend days of cricket as possible. Now there's an element where you go like, mate, embrace your weekdays. Get
I know
people
that one of the
down
things
there.
that Surrey have been chuffed about with what they've done the last couple of years, attendance-wise, is the demographic and how many of those attending Championship cricket during the week, particularly, are young,
Yeah.
under the age of. I think I might have this completely wrong, so I'm not even sure I'll say it, but
I'll go
um,
for it. Let's just go for it.
I think there was a stat that is it not was there not a stat that it was like 45% of spectators were under the age of 45 or something. That could be
I don't
completely
know.
wrong.
I reckon
Um,
that is wrong because you've got the same number for your stat as you do for the age. So I think that's not going to be correct. But you know what, Nick? You're such a professional. We're gonna leave that in. Anyway,
used to do that kind of. Here we go. Now I can give these are some stats that I can give you. Until 2024, Surrey hadn't had in the 21st century a 10,000 person match attendance. Then they had 3 in that year alone, and speaking. These are stats from within May. After 3 games of this season, they had 2 that had exceeded 10k, and 1 that was 9.7k, but was only a 3-day game. So after 3 games of this season, they'd seen 38,000 people through the doors. In the whole of last season, it was 64,000. Season before that, 52. Season before that, 50. Then COVID, and in 2019, it was 31,000. So they've more than doubled their numbers through the gates for county championship games, essentially since the pandemic. Which is, in an era where people talk more and more about how sort of like lifestyle habits have changed since COVID. That's a remarkable stat, I think.
I think it's fascinating, and it has given me given me food for thought because I basically think I was very broadly in favour of reduction in games. I probably still am. But my main criteria, and we're just going to keep this moving forward, is the sanctity of the competition. And you know that I'm big on this.
Yeah.
At the moment, Surrey have just gone back to the top of Division 1. They've overtaken Notts. They're going to play each other in what will be a very exciting match. September at the Oval. It's going to be great. But they only play each other once. And so if we're swapping over to an 8-team Division 1, 14 games, I prefer that to a 10-team Division 1.
I think that what does need to happen with whatever they land on for next year and beyond, and that's the crucial thing. It can't be one. It's not. This is not going to be a 1 year thing. They need to land on something that is long term. But what they need to land on is something that is better. Because where I struggle with, I think where everyone, the reason we've come to this point now, where this review is ongoing, is that the one thing that everything agrees on is that the structure is not very good.
Yeah.
In major part for the reason you said there, and you said something there was a lovely soundbite from yourself on this podcast last year, which you know the one I mean. We basically listed all three competitions, all three county competitions, and listed why they're all corrupted in one way or another. The championship being that reason that no everyone plays each other twice. The blast being that you win the group, take 7 weeks off, and by the time you come to play your quarter final, the overseas players who got you through your group have gone home. And the One Day Cup, because you start the One Day Cup in a way is the least corrupted because you've got the same squad throughout. But
it's the twos, mate. It's the twos.
Well, you're missing half your squad, so it's the least corrupted because nothing changes once it starts, but it is also the most corrupted because where are all your players? So what they've got, and that's not the One Day Cup is not going to change for next year. I think they've kind of settled on where it is, but the other two competitions have to be better designed when we come back this time next year. We should be talking we're recording on July 9th. We should be talking in Blast quarter final week with Blast Finals Day coming up in about 2 weeks' time.
Yeah.
And the championship, as you say, we should be hopefully halfway through a competition in which whatever the format is, whether it's 2 16 Division 1 conferences and a Division 2 underneath, or whatever it might be, whether it's an 18 Division 1, we have to be talking about a competition where all the teams in all the divisions play each other the same number of times.
Absolutely. Right. Quick scan on the results, just so you're aware of what happened. Leicestershire, top of Division 2, as we mentioned, they suffered a shock defeat at the hands of Middlesex. They lost, Middlesex won by an innings and 127 runs. The Dane Villas revolution begins in full strength. If you want to hear more from Dane Villas, Nick interviewed him on this podcast just a couple of weeks ago. Similarly, Lancashire lads, the boys, they are up and running. James Anderson got his first win of his captaincy, which was a hell of a good win, actually, because they were 44 for 4. I tell you what, they were 5 for 106 as well. That's not actually that shocking. The 44 for 4 was the best stat. I couldn't see it on my screen that made it look different. They beat Derbyshire by 261 runs, the result of which is they just go from like bottom to 6th immediately, which is just one of the quirks. Winning is just worth so many points. Kent's now bottom of that league, languishing with 2 wins, which they got earlier on in the season. Division 1, as we mentioned, Surrey have just overtaken Notts at the top of the table. They are 1 point clear of Nottinghamshire. Sussex, third on 123. They're 16 behind. Worcestershire, Essex, Yorkshire, the 3 kind of slightly cut off at the bottom so far. Right, time for a break.
The Cricketers' award-winning team brings our subscribers news, features and insight on county and international cricket every single day. You can try us now by signing up for £1. Yes, you heard that correctly, just £1 at thecricketer.com/digital.
Transfers. Silly season. It's upon us. We have news of moves and signings and new contracts. And one to start with our friends at the Cricket Draft is Surrey's overseas signing of Sai Kishore, left arm spinner. It's another signing one suspects made through the Vikram Solanki connection. Vikram Solanki, of course, a Surrey legend, also works over in the IPL with the Gujarat Titans. That was the connection that led to Sai Sudarshan's signing both last year and the year before. Pretty sure, it's one of those just kind of like unspoken truths. That's the only connection that exists between those two parties. So you know what? Just safely assume it's all right. Again, it refers back to the Kookaburra experiment. Are you developing your own spinners, or goodness me, there was a massive bang outside my house. Keep that in just for a bit of jeopardy. Are you developing your own spinners, or are you going, Jesus, we need a spinner? One more point for you, just to mull over. I think Surrey had always been eyeing up a big overseas international spinner signing because they don't have a specialist spinner on the books. They've already had Mitchell Santner play one game for them this year. They've been relying on Dan Lawrence and Will Jacks when available. I think I'm not a betting man, but at the start of the season, I would have put lots of money on Surrey at some point signing an international spinner.
What can I say? Obviously, whenever Surrey sign overseas player, particularly on a short-term deal, you get your inevitable Moneybag, Surrey, Shakib, all the. Let me just put out there to defend Surrey here. Everyone's doing it. Like everyone has signed spinners for these rounds. It speaks to your point before about who actually benefits from these rounds. From the Kookaburra experiment. But let it be said that this is not Surrey flexing their muscles in a way that others aren't, or else Todd Murphy wouldn't be playing for Gloucestershire, and Corey Rocky Coley wouldn't be playing for Warwickshire.
What a run up, by the way. Have you seen? I can't say his name. Corey Rocky Coley.
Corey Rocky Coley.
He prances. He prances to the wicket and then goes whoop, and it's so nice to watch.
May I just say, all I've got to offer you on Sai Kishore is exceptional hair.
This is the insight you come here for.
It is, though, isn't it?
There is a lot of things we do know about. Hair is one of them. Congratulations to Sai. Any other names to keep an eye out for? Or are we just going spinners for the second two rounds of?
Well, obviously we've got blast stuff. We've got blast stuff back first, haven't we? So, sorry, I've got Adam Zampa for another couple of games. We're talking about spinners. Blast wise, you'd have to slip him in and then slip him out of your draft side because he's only here for 4 games, and at the time of recording, I think he's played at least one of them.
Plays another tonight.
Plays another one tonight. So at the time of
get him in, you better get him in quick.
I suppose what I mean is let's make this more time. It's a shame you didn't put Adam Zampa in for the 4 games he was here.
Exactly.
He's probably you probably listen to this as he leaves, but because the blast group stage comes to an end in 9 days left of the marathon.
Am I excited for it? We'll get onto that in due course. But more cool signings. Elise Perry for Hampshire has finally arrived. It's just a great signing just to have a player of that calibre in the domestic competition. She's alongside, Grace Harris is at Surrey, Alana King's at Lancashire. Those are probably the 3 highest profile additions this year. Hampshire as a club, to get Luandre Pretorius, Devil Brevis, and Elise Perry in the same year. Whoever is doing that, those are like children's signings. Those are like where you go.
We mean that in a good way.
yeah. It'd be like, who would be the most fun to get in this blue sky world we're operating in? And they've signed all 3 of them. So congrats to Hampshire. You're doing it the right way. The main point I want to touch upon here is just what Elise Perry's signing says about the restructure of the women's game to Tier 1. These are there have been periods of times where Perry's played for like Loughborough Lightning, or you've seen someone at Northern Diamonds, but it does seem to have been a distinct change this year with the restructure to the Tier 1 system, that bigger names are being attracted.
Yeah, and I think part of that is a major part of that as well is, it's easy to say, the game's growing and all that. I think the reality is that county ownership. Counties don't like losing. The counties are ultimately rivals. This was always one issue of the regional setup, wasn't it? The reality is that you're asking traditional rivals for more than 100 years to collaborate on something that neither owns, neither wants to take full responsibility for because they didn't know how long it would be theirs for, neither were properly investing in. So you end up with, I don't call them second-rate overseas players, but the reality is you end up with cheaper players, cheaper squads, because there's less money going into it, and also there's less. Hampshire as Southern Vipers, probably not the best example because Vipers were very dominant, and if you speak to anyone at Hampshire now, they'll say that actually operationally they're not that different to what they were as Vipers. Based at the Utilities Bowl, Charlotte Edwards was the coach. Very very strong squad, load of England players at the time. But if you were to look at uh, so in terms of Surrey and South East Stars are probably a really good example. That South East Stars were Kent and Surrey working together. As soon as Surrey take over, they're based at the Oval rather than Beckenham as their prime base, and Grace Harris comes in as this big name overseas player. Because these guys want to win, and they are used to. If you're coming under the Surrey banner or the Hampshire banner or the Lancashire banner with Alana King, for example, you are they. Yeah, I don't know. There's a whole sea change, isn't there? And I think that is the point worth making. It's not just that the game has grown; it's that these overseas players, I think, are signs of how well Darwin has worked in that sense. That it has created this
Nice, yeah.
really competitive tier one and competitive tier two. Jess Jonathan is signing for Yorkshire next from the start of next season
So it will be tier one.
when Yorkshire goes to tier one. But the fact that Yorkshire as a tier two team are doing that now at 4 months' notice, or I think she arrives in February, so 7 months' notice, is this kind of thing that I don't think we'd have seen as Northern Diamonds in July preparing for the following season, for example.
It is funny. This is more of a tangent point than anything, and I think your overall analysis of the fact that the regional size used to fall between two stools is very kind of salient and, well, I don't know, is a good point basically. But there was the women's game, especially the Aussie women's game. They've had such success that for the first time you're kind of getting these players who are no longer like international superstars, but are still really like high quality players, and now being able to sign as overseas. So like Jess Jonathan hasn't played for Australia, I think, since 2023. Meg Lanning retired from international cricket in 2023, and but they're still. It's like they're like the David Visa, but better.
Well, I thought Amanda Jade Wellington, we were both at Beckenham for the first day of the women's county season and the first day of the tier one season run. And I remember watching Amanda Jade Wellington whack it for Somerset to win a game that they had no right to win. She came in, hit 6 4s in a row, having already taken, I think, 2 4 3 for. I remember watching Wellington that day and be like, this is the difference. It's like Amanda Jade Wellington just doesn't get in the Australian team. They decided they don't fancy her. She does not play for Australia. And she's signed on an all format, all season, exactly season long deal with Somerset. And you're watching going, like, Jesus, she would be England's leg spinner for a start.
Oh,
Secondly, she's walked into our big county launch.
yeah.
So all our England players playing.
Mate, the women's game is good at the moment, man. It's been such a fun year to follow.
It's been a brilliant. I like with all these restructures, you fear the worst, and particularly with the women's game because there have been so many of them. You know, we had the Kia Super League. Then a few years later, we had the domestic professionalisation, which was a very much like started in 2 different years because the first year was COVID, and a lot of players said to me, "This one has to work because I'm sick of being told we're revamping it."
Yeah,
And fair play to Beth Barrett-Wild. I think it's done a brilliant job at making this work as it has done. Yes, not all the counties are happy. Yes, they'd all like tier one status, and maybe that's because they kind of saw what this would be. You know, those who didn't get it, and they kind of feel like they've missed the boat a bit because they can see where the benefits that the eight tier one counties getting now. But it's been fantastic, and I don't think it could have gone much better from a tier one perspective than it currently has done.
and you need unhappy campers in that situation. You need people pissed off that they've missed out.
5 years ago, you would never have had 16 of the 18 counties coming forward and saying, we really want these. And bear in mind that 1 or 2 didn't go for it. Worcestershire, who were battling, essentially flooding on their ground at the time, just went, we don't have a facility to do, So the reality is you've got almost everyone was desperate for this. And that in itself, and the fact, as you say, the fact there were pissed off counties is massive progress to the women's game.
Question about Gloucestershire. Going to move on. So more signings. They've just lost. Well, Dom Goodman has gone to Sussex. Now, they have a peculiar situation where basically all of their seamers are out of contract. So Marchant de Lange, Price, Ajit Singh Dale, Zum Akhtar, and Luke Charlesworth. You're close on the grounds of Gloucestershire. That is I don't have any more nuanced question than that. I'm like, what? Like, why? Question number 1, why are all these people expected to leave? Because 2, if they're in their last year of their contract, why can't they just be given another one?
Yeah, well, I think they'd like to keep them all. I think this will sound strange because of the names you listed there, Marshall Langer, Tom Price, Ajit Singh Dale, Zum Akhtar, Luke Charlesworth, Don Goodman. Pedigree-wise, you would put you would slide Dom Goodman in just above Luke Charlesworth. Luke Charlesworth was on a, you know, this is, I think he's just finished university. He's a young player. He's played, if anything, a handful of games, if that. Dom Goodman is 24. He's played one game this season, took a 9 for in the match, that is, and then did his back in not long afterwards and won't play again this season. You'd have looked at this if you were Gloucester and gone, right, Ajit Singh Dale, Zoom actor, both with the Lions all the time. Tom Price, about as highly regarded an English-style seamer as any going around the country, bats as well. Martian Langer, expensive, former Test player, South Africa, bowls quick. And also, in Langer's case, for a county that's struggled financially and is on a tight budget, has had a lot of injuries. You'd probably look at all those and go, Goodman is the one we can kind of go, he'll stay, and we can sort of build around him. If the worst happens, we can build around this guy. He's 6'6", he's 24. You can see why. I think I should say, I think he's a brilliant signing for Sussex. There's so much potential in someone he's not rapid, but he's 6'6", which gives you a head start, immediately. And he's taken, he took a 5 for and a 4 for against Leicestershire, who had still the runaway leaders in Division 2 in his only appearance this season. I just think he's the one you don't think you're going to lose. And I think if you lose him, I imagine Gloucester are now going, God, this is strife, because he is the one.
So why do these lads want to leave though? Is it just more cash on offer elsewhere?
I think the reality is as seamers, that this is not unique for Gloucester. It's not the first time. Think back 6-7 years to Liam Norwell, Craig Miles, both left for Warwickshire. Both, with potential to bowl 85 mile an hour or so. Bristol has always produced slow pitches. I think it is one thing.
I thought the whole thing was their hybrid pitch was quick.
But that's been used once or twice. And the first time they used it was quick, and the second time they used it, the match was abandoned. So that's not, you can't hang your hat on, well, we've got a hybrid. Everyone's got a hybrid. They produce slow pitches that tend to get better for batting as the games wear on. It's very difficult to get results there. They also, I've listed those seamers there. That's basically all the seamers. You chuck in red ball wise Matt Taylor, Josh Shaw, white ball wise David Payne, but effectively there's not a great deal of room for manoeuvre, which means that of the guys I've named there, Delanger's been injured this season, Tom Price is injured, Luke Charlesworth's had injuries before, Zumakta had a hamstring injury, I think. Ajit Singh Dale, I think, is one who's probably been stayed fit the longest, and Dom Goodman, who's got a stress fracture. Now, if that is, and I feel like I might be missing some as well, but the combination of the pitches and the lack of depth in the attack because of the resources of a county like Gloucestershire mean that if you are one of those guys, particularly Singh Dale, Actor, Price, I think you look at it and go, you have to look at it and go, I really like playing here. And all those guys are indebted to Gloucester in some way. Tom Price came through the academy there via Oxfordshire. Ajit Singh Dale, Gloucester took a chance on after he was released by Hampshire, and Zumakta came to Gloucestershire via Saka. So these are all guys who've got, and then Martian Langer joined after leaving Somerset. Luke Charlesworth's come through the academy there. His brother's there. Same with Tom Price. His brother Ollie's there. Dom Goodman came through the academy there as well. So there's a lot of, goodwill. There's a lot of loyalty, but there's also that little bit with all these guys. I think where you have to go, could I be better managed elsewhere? Could I be better handled elsewhere? Would I have a better chance elsewhere? And you're not going to find many pitches that are less friendly to seamers and quick bowlers than Bristol, which means you're going to bowl more overs. And because of the size of the squad, it means you're going to play more games. You're not going to be playing. I remember when Matt Fisher joined Surrey, I interviewed him when he just joined. He said one of his big reasons was that Alex Stewart said to him, I'm signing to play 8 or 9 games in the Championship. And that's what a lot of these guys want to hear because they want to be at 100%.
He's going to play more than that.
Yeah, but they want to go back to what we were saying earlier in the Sam Cook stuff. These guys want to be at 100% when they're playing because they recognise that is when they've got the best chance of pushing their own career on, right? And Actor and Singh Dale have seen this with the Lions already, and I think on the back of that, particularly because the way that the Lions are now picking, they basically pick you if they think you can bowl, for seamers, if they think you can bowl quick, or if you're tall, or you do both. So if you're one of the other 17 counties, you look at these guys, you look at the list of guys from the last year and go, well, he's played for the Lions, and he's played for the Lions. And because of what they're now being picked on, these guys must have something about them. So I think it's very hard for a county like Gloucestershire to keep these guys. As much as you can say we won the Blast, you can stick around and we can do this stuff together. The reality is that everyone else can come at them with a lot of teams come at them with bigger pockets and say, come play for us and play and we'll look after you in a way that you currently can't be looked after. So I think that is the challenge facing them. And it's not just these guys out of contract. James Bracey has re-signed, but Miles Hammond, I think, is in the last year of his contract as a senior batter. It's also come to this because there were financial issues in the last few years, which has meant that contracts have been signed on like a 1-year extension basis and stuff like that. And then you hit this perfect storm where suddenly everyone's out of contract. And they're not the only county in this situation, but theirs is stark because, and I think the Goodman deal has really opened eyes to how stark that is because he, as I said before, he is the one who I think they probably banked on and gone, well, we'll have Don Goodman at least. It's also worth saying that that's not to say that all these guys will leave, but you'd be surprised if, 3 or 4 more didn't because of that situation.
Well, the men's Blast at least, is finally coming to a conclusion its group stage conclusion. That will all be wrapped up by this time next week. Somerset are the first team to have secured their place in the quarterfinals. Look,
the sigh.
I just,
Mate, we're so nearly 126 games in. We're nearly there.
but just like we're doing the maths before we hit record. Vitality Blast is a third of the length of the entire Premier League season. It's just so long. And again, we mentioned it earlier about how women's cricket this year has been good. I've loved the women's season. The Blast for the women has been great. There's a storyline. It's clear. It's coherent. Finals days in a couple of Sundays' time. Let's go. Like, it makes sense. It's compact. I understand what I'm watching, what matters and what doesn't. Jesus Christ, the men's one. We're playing 120 games for, at the end of it, a point where someone can win half their matches, lose half their matches, qualify 4th out of 9, to then play a quarter final. That's in like 7 weeks. The more I've paid attention to the Blast in my life, professionally and personally, the more I've been like, I can't be bothered with this comp, man. It's just, I find it just pointless, unbearable. And I always think like your friends, your casual fan friends, are the true litmus tests for these things. And I took a couple mates along to the Oval a couple of weeks ago to watch Surrey versus someone, case in point. And my mate, bless him, he loves it. And he was so excited. He's like, oh God, let's go. And he got the table up. He went, okay, so Surrey are 4th, and then the other team's 5th, right? And so what happens? What happens if someone wins? I was like, nothing. Nothing's going to happen. We've got another 70 matches of this show to go. He might all that might happen is that one of these teams might sneak a home quarter final, which is in 9 weeks' time, rather than an away one. And in 2020 cricket, the home advantage is about 53% or something like that. So it's negligible that that's even an advantage. I don't know if I'm actually really should be saying that as the host of a county cricket conversation, but the restructure for next year cannot come soon enough.
It's as I said before, it's got to get to a point next year where it's all at the very least played in one batch. If you remember last year when Northamptonshire were really good through the group stage, and then turned up for their quarterfinal and half their team had broken their fingers, and Ravi Bopara had gone off to the Cayman Islands T10 and had come back with a broken finger. That was the amount of time that had passed. He'd gone to play in a different T20 competition between the group stage and the quarters. Like that is, it's but it is not. It's not the cash cow, but it is that this is the problem, isn't it? It's been milked as this saving
exhibition.
grace.
It's 7 exhibitions to host. That's what it is.
It reminds me a bit, and this is strange. I mean, it's no stranger than comparing it to football's Premier League, I suppose, but it's a bit like Premier League darts. In fact, so Premier League darts now played over the group phase now played over 14 nights. So it's already like that. I think it's 14, maybe 16. But as you said, essentially every night rather than being played in one long group phase. It's played in you basically play a competition every night. So
Yeah.
it's the same 8 players playing the whole time, but they start and there's a winner of each night. So they play a mini competition every week for 16 weeks or 14 weeks, and eventually there's a playoff night and a finals night. And I'm sure it works for your casual, it works for your casual darts fan. But I think you look at it and go, you turn it on and go, I swear I watched these guys playing last week and the week before and the week before and the week before. Because it's endless, and you eventually hit the playoff week and the finals week. You go, God, this started ages ago. But the irony, the one difference with the football Premier League thing that you mentioned there in the third of the season is that it's a third of the football Premier League season played in essentially, if we take out those 2 Champions rounds, 4.5 weeks, 5 weeks. So when people talk, it's wild, right? And the football's Premier League is played over 38 games between September and May. So we've got a proper August to May, 8.5 months. We are playing a third of the number of that games in 5 weeks, which is 35, 36 days.
Let me just reel off. This episode will end soon enough. We're on the home straight. I'm just going to read you when the next fixtures are in the men's competition.
Well, I turned on my TV on Tuesday night, and Essex were playing Somerset, and I knew it was happening for work. But if I didn't, I'd be like, I thought they played these games at the other end of the week.
The chance to keep a track of when matches are when. Today we're recording on a Wednesday morning. This evening, Middlesex play Hampshire at 5 because they're playing it at school.
At a ground with
a guy with no floodlights. There are 3 other games that start at 7 tonight. Tomorrow there are 3 matches. One starts at 6:30. The other 2 start at 7. On Friday there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 matches starting at 3 different start times. There's one at 5. There's one at 5:30. There's 4 different start times. One at 5. One at 5:30. One at 6. A few at 6:30, and a couple at 7. Then on Sunday it's 2:30. There's 3, 4, 5 matches that start at 3. A 6th that starts at 3:30, and a 7th that starts at 4. Like it's impossible. I don't know if I've made my point properly, but I just
But then we had the lovely little caveat of Lancashire's back gauge situation.
Thank you. Yes.
On whatever day that was, when Phil Salt's bat didn't go through the gauge, and suddenly Lancashire win that game. But they then spend the next 5 days going, we might lose those points.
But so to fill you in, if you missed it, Phil Salt's bat failed to go through the gauge once, and by reading the reports on it, it's not quite clear when the bat was tested. I'm convinced I've been at some matches, I think in the Women's Blast this year, where bats have been tested as players are going out, basically, and before you start, and it might have been in the kind of ODI series between England and Windies. So Salt has scored some runs, and then he's since been cleared because they went, no, it's actually fine. And he's saying, I've used this bat for the last 2.5 years. I think this is one of those instances of a thing which can just be nipped in the bud immediately. If bats need to be tested in the same way that a 4th official in football checks the substitute studs before they go on, there's a 4th official by the changing room doors, and they go, bat please, mate. Done. And we never need to think about it again, because at the moment there is a chance that the bat's a millimetre too thick and teams are docked points. And they're all terrified of this because of what happened with Feroz Cushy and Essex last year. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I just think there are other ways you can fix it. For a start, I just don't think the punishment fits the crime in any way. If this is a player issue, it's not a team issue, right? They're not Lancashire weren't sending all their players out to bat with trees. This is a player issue in the same way that it'd be, if a player was done for doping, they'd be banned.
Yeah.
If you think it's that big a problem that there has to be some kind of punishment, like docking actual points for as you say, potentially a millimetre, then ban a player for a game or whatever. And actually, that would very quickly solve the problem. I'm not saying they should do that. I don't think that fits the crime either. Where do the bat makers come into this? I know the bat makers get very defensive when they get brought into this conversation, but if there's a specific size the bats can't be, why are they being made beyond that size? And I know there's stuff about swelling of bats and moisture and dryness and all that kind of thing. I know that a lot of counties just have a bat gauge sat in the changing room. You know,
Sounds
use it.
incredibly sensible.
But I just don't think that. But I think even when a bat is too big, I just think you could go as an umpire. This bat is too big. Please, you 12th man, could you bring him a
A
smaller
different
bat?
bat. Yeah.
And that's your warning. And if it happens again, then you get docked 5 runs or something. I don't see how a slightly bigger bat is any more advantage than running down, pirouetting on a length on the third day of a championship game. And what's the fine there? 5 runs. It doesn't. That those two things do not equate. 5 runs for digging a trench on a length for you know
Yeah.
for
No,
international
you're
sport,
correct.
or an
Um,
8 millimeter on the toe end. Like I'm just not having it.
it's a subject I hope we never talk about ever again, basically, because it's not worth anyone's time. So join us in. We've had a very exasperated episode today. I don't know. First half wasn't. First half was cheery. The second half's been a bit exasperated. Women's Blast shaping up nicely. Surrey and the Blaze are top of the table. They lead from Warwickshire. There's probably a bit. They're probably those three should be in finals day, which is Sunday the 27th of July. So 2 Sundays on this
Once
Sunday.
again, showing how it's done. Group stage, finals day.
It's a great. It's
So
like
they know it can be done.
honestly, it's so nice.
Easy.
I'm sure listeners and viewers will appreciate, when covering cricket. Cricket's not in rude enough health to not at sometimes be doing like I don't, not PR is the wrong word, but like you're wanting the sport to do well. You're covering it critically and as accurately as you can, but there's also an element of being like, this is great, come and see this, let's go and get involved. There's something wonderful about, like, there was this big rebrand of the women's game this year, and it's just been fun, and I've enjoyed the cricket, and I felt way more invested in it than I ever expected to, because I've never really been invested in any kind of like domestic cricket. I enjoy it, I watch it, I pay attention to it, but the women's blast has been 10 out of 10. Surrey and the Blaze are playing this weekend, I think, in a top of the table clash. If you are in the local area, I highly recommend grabbing yourself some tickets and getting down to the finals day on Sunday 27th at the Kia
Yeah.
Oval. I think it'll be a great day. And if Surrey are there, I might be working on it. And even if they're not there, I'm going to be perched in the stands and watching along. I think that's it.
With those beers that you'll bring along yourself.
Well, T20 not allowed to do it for a T20.
Sorry.
That's why the Red Bull stuff. I should have mentioned there as well. Like the last semi-final spot is probably, well, Lancashire and Hampshire in prime position for it at the moment, battling out for fourth. Somerset are a long way behind. They're bottom with 1 win from 10. That's everything for this week. Nick, thoroughly enjoyed it. Lovely to be back with you. If not in person this week, what can you do? But next week we'll be back holding hands once again. This County Conversation podcast is sponsored by Daffabet, the world's leading online betting site. So to find out more, visit daffabet.com. I've been Cameron Punsonby. Thank you as ever to Nick, and we'll see you and speak to you again next week.